Hello and welcome to a Faeria video, and in this video I'd like to show you something about deck building which might be useful if you want to build your own decks as opposed to using one of the very popular types of decks that you see on the ladder, that you see when you're playing, that you know are going to be very effective. Because like most competitive games, there are very competitive decks, and one of the best roads to success is just to copy one of those deck types, or archetypes as people sometimes call them, but types is a good enough word, really, isn't it? Anyway, you can copy a deck type. For example, Sahara here, if I look at this, is a fairly common yellow archetype. It's got flash salmons and your wind soldiers for haste, quick damage removal, surprise hits on your opponent orb. It's got good removal, the new Spirit Theft card, which is insane. I'll have to talk about that card more in a later cast. It's got Soul Drain and Last Nightmare, which is the best hard removal card you're going to find. And it's got very powerful creatures in the Manta Rider, which has been OP since day one, the Windborn Champion, and the Windstorm Colossus, which you hope to get out there for only 5 costs. So this deck is very common. Variations on it, of course, exist. Ones with more flying, ones with less flying, ones with more events, less events. But you're going to see a lot of this. So it's pretty easy to create a deck once you have all the cards that is going to be competitive. But sometimes it's fun to make up your own deck. And there's a new sort of feature in the game currently in the quests that came in with the Fall of Everlife expansion. If you look at the quests here, I've got Ultima, which is an old style one, win 3 games. And then you get the reward here in gold. But there's these new lore page requests that ask us to play cards we might not normally play. For example, Voice of Hunger. And if you play it 3 times, I've played it once already, in fact. If you play it 3 times, you achieve this quest, and you get a lore page so you can read something about the Voice of Hunger. And for completists like myself, and perhaps like you, you're going to want to get all of these as well. So now that they've added that to the game, it means that creative deck building is kind of encouraged. So how does Endorphin do creative deck building, you wonder? Well, let's create a new deck. I'll just start, well, I could start with one of these here, one of the green decks, but I won't. I'll just start with a custom deck. And let me just over here hide all the mythics just to simplify the display so I don't have repeated versions of the same card. And I'm going to create a Voice of Hunger deck. Let's not call it Voice of Hunger. Let's call it Hungry. Okay, let's call it Hungry. Oh, you can't put an exclamation mark in there, unfortunately. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is put in my Voice of Hunger. So when you're building a deck and you want it to be at all effective, it should be themed. It should be very tightly organized around how you hope to play the deck, how you hope to win with the deck. You have to consider from the start what your win conditions are going to be. So in this case, Voice of Hunger is a win condition in itself, himself, herself. Let's say itself. It looks like a bit of an it. Voice of Hunger says destroy all adjacent friendly creatures. That's a gift effect, so it happens when you play the card. This, meaning this card, then gains attack and life equal to their combined life. So it's the life of the surrounding creatures that matter. So in order to get the biggest boost to Voice of Hunger, you're going to want critters with really good life. And that's not hard to find in green. So for example, the Deepwood Grizzly, I'm going to take 3 of those because Deepwood Grizzly, though it has no effect, is a very strong card in and of itself. It only costs 5 for a 3/8, and it only needs 1 forest. So if you're going second, this is a first turn play, which is quite amazing because 8 is a lot of life. This card is going to stick around for some time. It'll collect Faeria for you. It is very good to kill off small attackers, which you might see if you're playing against a rush deck. So this is quite a good card. It has been since the beginning. And it's got a huge life score. 8? My goodness. For a turn 1 possible play, perfect for Voice of Hunger. If Voice of Hunger eats a bear, it's going to get +8/+8. Super, super good. Runin's Messenger, I love this card. It's always been one of those cards that hasn't quite always been viable. There's always been something slightly better than Runin's Messenger to put in a deck. But in this case, I'm going to take it because, look, it's got 5 life. And it's got jump, which means you have a bit of maneuverability. And if you do happen to get to a god, you're going to start feasting on random green creatures that have their cost reduced. So you're going to start to gain card advantage. In a future video, I'm going to explain all about card advantage, card cost, and things like that, because they're concepts that aren't always understood by players. But everyone understands that getting cheap green creatures is a good thing. So sure, Runin's Messenger, you can be pretty sure your opponent is going to try to get rid of this card as soon as they see it. And it's got a high life score, so it's going to feed Voice of Hunger, and it's got exactly the same cost as Deepwood Grizzly. So you can play that turn 1 or turn 2 easily. Right. What else to take? Well, Voice of Truth. This is a very interesting card because it totally depends on what your opponent is playing. But it's a great reaction to some cards that are just going to otherwise destroy your life. There are lots of cards now that get big boosts throughout the game. I mean, I suppose Voice of Hunger is one of those. Voice of Truth is a good answer to Voice of Hunger. One voice against another. It's got a nice big health. So I'm going to take 2 of these. I'm not going to take 3 because as a 1/5, it's not the most powerful thing on its own. It could be sort of a dead card in your hand depending on what your opponent plays. Right, well, Living Willow, 1/7. Okay, sure. Willow used to be a staple of green decks. It's not so much all the time because we have so much choice now. 1/7 fits the type of deck we're building. It's inexpensive. It's a taunt, which means that it can tie up your opponent's creatures and gain you time. So I certainly think that belongs. And Deepwood Stalker, interestingly, may or may not fit this deck because it fights a creature when it comes into play. It's great removal in a color that has almost no removal. It's targeted removal. You can get rid of something on the far side of the map, but that means it's not going to have 4 life. It's going to have something less than 4 depending on what it hit, and it might very well die. So it's not really a combo card with Voice of Hunger in the way I'd like to make this deck. Let's put in some Runin's Guidance, though. It's a nice card all around. It's a very cheap way to pump up your creatures, and the gain 5 life can save your butt. So we definitely need that. And while I'm thinking of pump cards, there's a few other options, but I'm going to go over here and choose what I think is one of the best cards in the game, the Emperor's Command. I'm sure you know this card. It has 3 possible effects, which itself is great because it's so versatile. It's sort of an anti-pump card. Instead of boosting your own creatures, you diminish your opponent's creatures. The -1 to health can kill a lot of things right off the bat, a lot of very pesky things, like the Assassin that yellow can play. The Assassin that will be killing 2 of your green creatures for a very low cost, unless you command it to leave the map. Structures, there are lots of good structures out there now, since they received a boost in one of the updates. Doing 3 damage to a structure like the flower, the crystal flower, is perfect. Or you can just gain life. It's another way of gaining life. So sure, I'm going to take 3 of those. I think that's beautiful. And it means that you have 6 life gain events in the deck. That helps you in the early game against rush decks. You need help against rush. The taunt from Living Willow helps as well. So as I build a deck, I'm thinking about all the possible decks I might see, the decks I know from my experience I'm going to see, and I try to build in some answers without diluting the main purpose of my own deck. Because if all your deck does is answer decks you're going to see, it's not really going to succeed on its own merits at all. Very unlikely. There are some control-ish decks in blue that can operate that way, but not so much in green. So, continuing. Wow, there's so many good cards I could take here. It's just absolutely crazy. Well, one thing I'm going to want is a way of getting to my opponent's orb, because green is not known for mobility. I've got Runan's Messenger that can hop there slowly, but I don't think it's going to live, to be quite honest. So I'm going to take the Horse Master, the Silent Horse Master. It's sort of silent. It's the Silent Horse Master. I guess it goes with our voice theme. We have 2 voices and a Horse Master that's silent. Fair enough. The Horse Master requires that you have 3 lands in play, 3 wild lands, so they can be of any color, in this case green. So 3 forests in play. I can put this down. I can give another creature charge 3 so that it can get into the action. I think that's kind of necessary in this deck. Otherwise, I have the funny feeling I'll never get to the other side of the map. And I'll never be able to do any damage to my opponent. Okay, let's go back to green. And I'm going to really stick with my theme here. Nico Mata. This is very tempting. Nico. 3/5, and it can get a double attack. 4 forests, though. I don't know. I haven't had much luck with that card yet. It's not a bad card. I haven't used it enough. Tiki Healer, it would be great against certain decks, but we already have healing. Likewise, I'm not going to take the Grove Caller because I chose the Horse Master instead. You can use one or both. Grove Caller is great to teleport your creatures to forests, but if you don't already have an aggressive forest, it's not going to get your guys to your opponent's orb. That's the problem, and I don't see any way this deck is going to do that. Yes, so I'm going to go for Oakling, because all my creatures are green, with the exception of Horsemaster, so this will almost always pay off if I have a creature in hand. I do have expensive, got quite a lot of 5 cost. I am going to have creatures sitting in my hand waiting for me to play them. So on its own, Oakling is weak. 1/5, and it costs 5. The +5/+5 is not always enough of a benefit to make this card viable. But look, 1/5 in a hungry deck, it fits. It fits. So I'm going to take it. Ursus is also really tempting. But you know what? I've got lots of expensive cards here. And the idea, I'm not really building anything around this. I have no way to do damage to my own creatures. So that's actually kind of a different sort of thing altogether. Right, well, there's a lot of big green, but you know what? I think I've already got expensive cards, and I want something a little cheaper. I could take the Wood Elemental, another Taunt to tie up my opponent, but to be really comborific, I'm going to take Spirit of Rebirth, at least 2 of them. It's a good little creature that can collect, and anytime one of my other creatures dies, it's going to boost cards in hand as well. And my other creatures are going to die, both because my opponent will be killing them and I will be doing so myself. Voice of Hunger is going to eat a creature. That will trigger Spirit of Rebirth. So I've got a bit of a combo there. So actually, I'm going to take 3 of those. And that only gives me 2 cards left. It's actually kind of difficult to know in such a strange deck I'm building what I should take. More creatures would be good because it's a creature heavy deck. See, the last 2 slots, I mean, I could just go for Runin, something good in its own sake. I could go for another win condition. This deck is really single-minded. The only way I'm going to win with this deck is with Voice of Hunger. That's actually not a great strategy at all. You should have some alternative ideas, unless you're building a pure rush deck, and even then most rush decks have other ideas. So what have I done? I've taken only 2 Voice of Truths. I've taken only 2 Deepwood Grizzlies. How'd that happen? When you know them. 2 Voice of Truth. So actually I only have 1 card left. Eridon is another choice, because if it dies, all my creatures get boosted. You know what? I'm going to take Eridon because it's thematic. That's why. Now, I've made a deck. It's not the best deck in the world. It's never going to be, because it's built around a card that you just don't see in tournament decks, Voice of Hunger. But it could be kind of fun. Let's see. Let's see how good it is. And by playing games, we test our decks, we see their strengths and weaknesses, and then we can hone them. We can change them around. So I'm going to play the Hungry deck, and I'm going to play it in ranked play because we just had a ladder reset, and I'm down to rank 10 from God again. Yeah, I made it to God. In fact, did I break 100, top 100 last time? I can't remember. If I didn't, I was pretty close. Faeria is a great, fun game, but in order to get in the top number of players, it is very competitive, and you have to have a lot of time. I do not always have the time because I have other things that I do besides play this game. So I don't always have the time to make it to the top. Oh, there's my other voice deck sitting right there. That was the one that I built when I managed to play a single Voice of Hunger. Oh, yay, here we go. A game has come up. Rehavadin. You could say Rehavadin, or you could say Rehave-din. I have no idea. Okay, I'm going to get rid of all of these because all I want is Voice of Hunger. None of these are turn 1 plays anyway, so that's a decision I'm going to make. I mean, normally playing this deck, playing a green deck, I'd be happy with Living Willow in my opening hand. More than happy. I'd even be happy with Oakling in my opening hand. They're going to be collectors. Spirit of Rebirth is a collector. But in this case, I'm only playing this deck for 2 reasons. To get Voice of Hunger out there, and to illustrate a few things for you about deck building. So, I greet my opponent. Please be nice. Greet your opponent. Be polite. Now, I'm going to put... I'm going to build to one side for the simple reason that I have no idea what my opponent is going to play. If my opponent comes right down the center at me, if I'm up against a rush type deck, I could be in trouble. Really, that's just the long and the short of it. So I don't want to help my opponent by putting a land in front of my orb. That helps my opponent get to my orb, or my face, as we say. And look at how pretty I am. So I'll play out a collector. And I have a green card in hand, so if this goes away somehow rather quickly, Oakling is at least going to get the effect. Deranged Monkey. Wow, one of the great new Fall of Everlife cards, which is quite often played in this way as a 4-cost 4/6. How beautiful is that? And you can do it turn 2. A little bit of a no-brainer, this card. It's very hard not to put it in a deck. And as we get more and more cards in Faeria, this becomes more of a problem. There's so many good cards to put in a deck. So, okay. Well, that halts my progress. Although, I could try and get myself in between. See, I want to be in between the orbs to collect 2 a turn. The alternative is to build off to this side. But that is not great with Horsemaster. Horsemaster's better if I can work on one side and shoot up towards my opponent. So this places me in a strange situation here, actually, with the cards I have in hand. Now, this deck doesn't need too many forests, but placing forests gives me strategic positioning for the future. So, you know what? I'm going to build inside like this and establish that right away. And I'm going to say hi. I'm going to say don't kill me right away. It was already going to take my opponent 2 turns to chip away at a 1/5 Oakling, but all it would take is a 1 power boost or an Emperor's Command on my Oakling, and that would be it. And I want this card to be a bit more sticky than that and survive for a little longer. So let's see how things go here. My opponent could do anything. Lots of Faeria. 3 forests potentially this turn. I presume they will play a forest. Aha! There you go. You just don't know what your opponent's going to play, do you? Not this early in the game. Wow, advantage. So it's very good that I pumped up my own card. Well, I don't know. Could have been a waste in a way if it's going to die anyway, but at least it sticks around this turn. It got me 1 Faeria at a cost of 2 to pump it up. So I'm only down 1, and I get to do more damage. So as I play through, this is something you should be doing. You should be looking at the cost of what you're doing and how it matches your opponent's costs. And this helps you realize which cards are advantageous. It helps you in the longer term to build better decks. Right. This places me in an impossible situation. It has to be said. I don't have the 3 forests yet for the Horsemaster. I drew another that I simply do not need. And that means I only have 1 green creature in hand, you see. It really is terrible. So you know what? In order that I don't lose out entirely, I'm going to have to Emperor's Command this, so that at least I take a creature with me when I go. Like so. That pumps up my Living Willow to some insane stat, and then I'm going to go a bit aggressive with it here. So this ties down my opponent so that the boar can't double collect. They're not going to be able to clear another 8 life from their hand. It's just not going to happen. There's some horrible things that could happen. There's always horrible things. See, they wanted to double collect, so they paid 1 for the... They paid 1 for Shifting Tides so they could collect 1. So the Tides was free. They moved me out of the way, making it harder for me. Well, I was only going to collect once next turn anyway, so... I don't know. That actually wasn't a great move on their part. I guess they really wanted to double collect. I don't see why. Necessarily, when I'm going to get rid of their boar anyway. Okay. So they're going to... See, because they didn't play a land that turn, they have to play a Rainforest Explorer as 3/5, whereas it would be a 4/6 if they had played a lake. But that doesn't really matter because I have 6 power here anyhow. So they chose to draw instead. Okay. I'm not really drawing what I want to draw, am I? So that indicates I should go for a draw here. But then building lands is very tempting because I could put a prairie here, play Horsemaster, zoom up and play an aggressive prairie as my second one, because when you're playing two prairies, you can split them up over your turn. You don't have to play the two together. But that would be to ignore the double collection. I think that that makes no sense. I am going instead, I am going to create land, however, because I'm a bit greedy. I'm going to go collect, clear one of my problem things, and then call it a day. Because on the next turn, now he can double collect yet again. This nice hippie looking yak up here. Very pleasant looking yak, very colorful. Now, if this is a green-blue player, and they're trying to build towards things like Frog Tosser, they're doing it in a very slow manner, because they really want to be putting down special lands every turn for the first 6 turns, and then they can start to dominate the board. So this makes me wonder what they're doing, really, and maybe... Is it blue-green without Frog Tosser? Without the stuff that costs 6 special lands? It could be. Right. Spirit of Rebirth, when I have nothing that's going to die. This is just not working out, is it? I'm going to take a draw. Okay, that would be good if I had a forest in a good place, but I don't yet. So I will just clear this card. I could use Voice of Truth, but that only really saves me 1 damage. It's just not worth it. I'm still a 6/4, you see? So I've actually cleared 2 cards, and I'm still a 6/4. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for Living Willow. It would be so perfect if I got a Voice of Hunger there. Right, time to do some stuff. I will play Spirit of Rebirth. I will play Ruin's Messenger. I'll put some threats on the board. I can't be reactive the whole game. I don't expect him to clear a card this turn, but Spirit of Rebirth may as well go out of my hand. Right, a monkey way far away from me as a collector. He really, really wants a lot of Faeria. Oh, and the defensive, you see? This is what I said when I built the deck. Ruin's Messenger, and I just drew another one. Everybody reacts to Ruin's Messenger. Everyone treats it like a serious threat, even though it often isn't. It's a great card to pull out stuff from your opponent's deck, because I've made my opponent give up on the left side, which is kind of amazing to me, but I've done it. This 7/7 could have been placed here, and actually would have been a bigger threat to me. Right. Sure. Once again, I'm not that well placed for a Horsemaster yet. Although, you know, there's some really weird things I could do here, because Horsemaster makes weird plays possible. I could Horsemaster to here, Voice of Truth this, and take a shot at it. That would cost 7, so that doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to actually do this. Get a forest up here. I'm basically giving up the 3/5. He's going to think that's pretty weird. But I'll play another. So yeah, that was probably not the best move in the world. I'm basically giving up the 3/5. For 1 Faeria and the damage it's going to be able to chip away at this. But I do get the bonus from Spirit of Rebirth, and it's on a Horsemaster. Now, however, I can't make the surprise play this turn. Ooh. Right. I'm not drawing my Voice of Hunger. This is sad. It's so sad. You know what I'm going to do, though? I'm going to do the play I talked about last turn. I make land here. I need 7, so I'm going to grab this. Tying up the cards to some extent. I'm going to play this aggressively because now it will trade with this force. I'm going to move here, collect. And then Voice of Truth this to a 0-2, which he was not expecting. Not expecting. There's no way he was expecting a Voice of Truth combo with Horsemaster and Rune's Messenger suddenly moving 3 instead of 2. That's one of the most peculiar things I've ever done, but I think it's good because I can clear his double collector. And double collect myself. That's big. I need to start building some advantage here. And you know, I should have played this Voice of Truth up so that I could have traded with a 7-1. That wasn't thinking ahead. It's very hard to play optimally when you're also commenting on the game. Right here, so I'm just going to do this. I don't need another forest over there. I have tons of them now. I clear. I have a double collector if I want. Move into double collection. Wow, I'm building a lot of lands this game. Now the reason I put one here is that lets me put the Horsemaster here. It's a 5/4 Horsemaster though. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to place it here. And here we go. Now I do the clear. I could have played another Spirit of Rebirth and got a double benefit, but actually I prefer to hold something back. I don't want to fully commit to this board. That was just a judgment call. I don't care about these Spirit of Rebirths, and I really don't care if they get boosted higher. That's not the card I care about. Frog Tosser, finally. Right, now he's going to just start to win. I had quite a dominant board position there with all the wells controlled and an aggressive card, but those days are over. Those days are really over. Double collect. Just think about aggression now. Take a draw first. Nice. That's nice. Right. Clear this. Hit. Don't forget to hit your opponent when you can. And I'm just going to tie that up where it can't collect. Optimally, I would have done that a bit differently. You know what? I can put a Spirit of Rebirth here. Which one? The stronger one. There we go. So I can continue the rebirth cycle. Green is the color of nature and rebirth. Okay. How are we doing here? We're doing pretty well. Look at that board. So we can collect off 3 wells, potentially 4, and also hit for 9 at least. Or we can choose to collect off only 2 or 3 wells and hit for 9 plus Rune's Messenger, 12. That means we have to build a land, though. Well, we have to build 2 lands. We have to build prairies. Okay. Frogify my taunt because he's desperate for Faeria. That is why. Wow. It took 2 cards to clear my 1/7. We almost have lethal, but to do that, we have to build 2 lands so I can't get a card draw. Yeah, well, he's gonna... The writing on the wall, as they say. First win of the day, first win of this month. With a Voice of Hunger deck that never saw Voice of Hunger played. So I never played my win condition. and I won anyway. I'm not sure what was going on there. To be quite honest, I don't think my opponent was playing optimally, but that could have been because of a bad draw. You really can't read your opponent's mind. I don't like judging people when I don't have all the facts available to me. Because the thing about green-blue is you have to get double collection going because it's a greedy deck. It needs quite a lot of Faeria. At the same time, you have to get to your 6 lands. It's hard to do both at the same time unless you're playing some land acceleration, which is out of fashion these days. Okay, new game. Mr. Loser. Aw. Oh, come on. This person needs a stronger ego structure. Or less of a sense of irony. I'm not sure which. Okay, Mr. Loser, you're going to see a voice of hunger. And I'm actually going to keep a spirit of rebirth. No, I'm not. Get rid of them. Look for something that... I didn't find it. I was saying, look for something that voice of hunger can eat. A bigger feast for the voice. Not a 3/3 that I don't want to eat anyway. So most of the cards in this deck, I'm very happy for Voice of Hunger to eat. Almost all of them. Okay, I do not want my guidances. I want more critters. Well, this is interesting. I can play a Voice of Hunger just as a 3/5, or I can play Voice of All. Wow, this is a voice deck. I've got like, just realizing it's a choir. I've got at least 3 voices here. And 1 silence. That's right. So, okay. Let's just do that. Get Eridon out there. Now, I really want Eridon to go away and die. But in the meantime, if he collects, I'm happy. He's kind of expensive as a collector. 5 for a 3/3. Not good value as a collector. And my opponent is playing red of some sort, but not red rush. It could actually be... it could be combat red. It could be red-blue. Hard to tell at this point. Keep your mind open. Looking like combat red now. That's okay. 3rd guidance. Good grief. That's why you don't see me in many tournaments, by the way. I'm actually going to guidance and go aggressive. Go aggressive. Now, this could get punished pretty easily. But you can't live in fear, can you? You can't always live in fear. I'm just playing for fun here, the early stages of the ladder with a fun deck. All I want to do is get out Voice of Hunger twice, and I'll be a happy person. I don't care if I win. Though winning, you know, a nice bonus. Whoa, okay. Did not have the combo. See, and if I would have just sat back, I would have lost out there. So I'm just going to keep building forests. Not that I need them, but they come in handy. A forest built here means that later in the game, if I need to, I can play a card right in between the wells. It's important. Whereas if you just build plains here, you're going to have to waste a turn later, either moving a card in or building a forest to birth a new critter there. So I do not need 4 forests, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't play a forest. This is okay now. Ah, there we go. We have a visitor come to comment. Not sure if you can hear her. Right. So I would like to step up. Red, yellow. I expect tons of removal, especially with Bloodsinger. So you know what? I don't know what. Do you know what? Actually, I'm going to build plains because plains here is often a bad spot to bother building a land. But with Horsemaster, it means it's good stuff. It means I have a route to my opponent. I'm going to push forward because I'm going to make a big play soon. I can feel it. And I'm going to be really weird. If this goes up to a 5/8, I'm actually going to force more cards out from my opponent because I'm sure he's got lots of removal. But what he doesn't have is a nightmare because that requires 3 deserts. I do not need to fear the nightmare. I could fear the crystal flower. That'd be kind of annoying. I feel a little sad that I've actually invested 3 cards here. When all I wanted is for Eridon to die, really. Okay, there's a Gift of Steel. He must have just drawn that. Right, another Bloodsinger. He really wants to kill me now, and I expect he will right now with an event from hand, and it's the Wrath. So by playing a card, I forced a card. He actually had to use a 3-card combo to get rid of my 3-card combo. He gains advantage, however, because he did damage to me twice over, to my orb, from the Grimguard and from the Scyther's Wrath. But that's red in a nutshell, isn't it? Okay, I've got another Voice of Hunger. All I want to do is play these cards and get that quest out of the way. So what I'm going to do then is Oakling is just food. For Voice of Hunger, which means I take even more damage. I'm definitely going to lose this game. Have no doubts about that, but I'm sort of forcing him to nightmare me. Not that I want to force him to nightmare me, but that's what he's going to do. Definitely a red-yellow deck is going to completely dominate what I have here, especially if it's got a lot of removal events, which it does because he's playing Bloodsinger. So, Mr. Loser, I don't think you're such a big loser. Okay, I'm just waiting. I've got very little more to say. Interesting. People are favoring Sky Anemone. I'm not sure. If you're playing a damage deck, aren't there better cards to play? Like ones that damage your opponent? I suppose it's for the mirror match or just to get around a deck that's speedier than your own. That's fine, but I much prefer Grimguard as a taunt. Now, I know that can be removed by events that Sky Anemone is immune to. So there's some argument for the anemone, the Sky Enemy of the Sky Anemones, but okay, well, I've got nothing that can remove this from hand, so I'm just going to have to do that. Let's just face the music. Now, if I want to get my quest done, I can just play Voice of Hunger, make a really huge target that he can destroy, and then I concede the game. But I'm not like that. I'm not like that at all. I'm going to draw a card, hope for something else. See, this is Endorphin's power of card draw right here. I have three, count them, Horse Masters. Sigh. And yet, if I was to play a deck with only 2, I would never, ever draw them when I need them. That's my turn done. I would say if there's a card that's important to your deck, always take 3 when building the deck. Yes, you might be cursed by getting more than 1 when you don't need it. Another Sky Anemone. See, it's not really advancing his cause any, is it, to keep playing those? Whereas, say, a Last Nightmare would just have made him laugh heartily, or even a Crystal Flower. Right, so I've got my choice of what to kill, but I definitely want to get rid of that, or else everything else I do is kind of pointless. And here we go. He's going to think I'm a loon. I'm going to play another voice here. I'm going to say, wow. Wow, amazing. Amazing. I just conceded the game. I'm going to grab... well, I need cards, and I'll need Faeria. I still do have a path to victory here, oddly. Because he can't... Oh, well. Is it Nightmare, finally? No, it's the win. Yeah. Fair enough, you know? Fair enough. See, if he didn't have the Scourge Flame, I actually had a path to victory, because I could have got rid of his taunt next turn while playing a couple lands here. And then the turn after, a land in front of his face, Horsemaster win. So I had a 2-turn win, but he was definitely going to win within 2 turns. So, yeah. Not really great. Okay, well... Ah, look, I've got the lore page for Voice of Hunger. The deeper you go into the wilderness, the more terrifying and monstrous creatures you will face. Okay. Is that true? That's probably quite true. Don't know. Would not actually go into any wilderness that would include Voice of Hunger. So let's look at the deck again. Let's wrap this up. So the deck was built around Voice of Hunger, so my thinking was I want creatures with huge life totals that in some way also have a synergy. And so I chose Oakling, which definitely has a big life total, and it's going to give me +5/+5 to something in hand, which means that I'm not completely committing to what's on the board. I will have a follow-up play. Eridon is just a bonus thing in there to make everything bigger, because I had 1 slot left over. The Messenger was a threat, a potential threat, which always draws a response and is good as a double collector. As we saw, it's good as mobile removal. It's really good if you ever get to trigger its effect, which I didn't, not once. Well, I only played a couple games, but Deepwood Grizzly is just a strong opening creature at 3/8. Voice of Truth follows the template of choosing creatures with big life totals to feed Voice of Hunger. And it's also great because there are so many cards that boost themselves to ridiculous extremes right now. Either using Rakoa or the Soul Eater. Lots of stuff. Spirit of Rebirth fits the theme of boosting cards in hand. Living Willow is a strong thing to give to Voice of Hunger, and in the meantime it acts to slow your opponent. It's also a good turn 2 collector. And then I added some utility with Ruin's Guidance and Emperor's Command, because you do need utility. You need ways of surprising your opponent with stuff from hand, and that means an event. And finally, in order to facilitate a route to my opponent's orb, I put in the Horsemaster. So overall, what would I say about this build after playing it? Well, I've only played it a few games, the 2 that I showed you, and a couple others. And I would say that it's surprising that it wins. It probably wins about half the time, which is pretty good for an ad hoc kind of random, let's make a Voice of Hunger deck. So I'm actually going to rename this deck Trio. There we go. Because I've got Voice of Truth, Voice of All, and Voice of Hunger. So that seems appropriate. Anyway, I hope you've learned something from this. It's totally possible to make a cool deck around an unexpected card. And you really have to think in terms of consistency, in terms of the deck theme. What is your win condition? Do you have an alternative win condition? Do you have utility to deal with commonly seen decks? But please don't just make your deck a response to the ones out there, or it probably won't win on its own merits. Thanks for watching this video. My name's Endorphin. You might meet me on the ladder if I play better decks than this. And I'll be back with other videos. Thanks.